Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we are talking the matchup between the Los Angeles Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks in Week 14. This is a Sunday night game and should be a pretty interesting battle. The Rams are still fighting for a playoff spot while the Seahawks are fighting for the title in the NFC West, trying to hold off the 49ers and clinch that first round bye. So this is definitely a very important game for actual football, and I think from a fantasy perspective, it's going to be a fun game as well. The over-under for this game is actually 47.5, and the Rams are actually favored to win this one barely, but right now their implied point total is about 25 with Seattle at about 23. I think this one's actually interesting, but I'm actually going to go with Vegas on this one. I think that the Rams end up winning this game, and I think that the under is hit in this game. Historically, we've typically seen a bit lower scoring games between the Rams and the Seahawks. Not so much in Seattle a few weeks ago, but this one is in LA. The Rams, with the exception of the game against the Ravens, their defense has actually been playing decently, and Seattle has been a bit up and down over the past couple weeks as well. I think this ends up being a lower scoring affair. So let's start with the Seahawks side of the ball. If you have Russell Wilson, you probably have to start him at this point. I do think he ends up being a top 12 quarterback. I'm not too worried if you have him. Yes, there's probably a better play, but Russell Wilson always gives you that potential for a really big game. So if you have him, you're going to start him. The backfield for the Seahawks is beginning to get pretty interesting, with Chris Carson still performing well and Rashad Penny finally looking like the first round draft pick that they paid for him. So I think if you have either of these guys, you can trust starting them. It's kind of similar to like Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams in the Packers backfield, where this team can actually support two running backs in fantasy, and I think you're okay starting both of them as running back 2 options this week. The receiver perspective is a bit different. Lockett has been an absolute dud since he's come back from the injury that he sustained against the 49ers, and it's becoming very hard to trust him. He could have a good game this week, being a couple weeks removed from that injury, but honestly, if you have a better option, I would be far too scared to trust Lockett in my lineup this week after giving you 0 in the last week and barely anything the week before. So if you can pivot off of Lockett, I think that is a good choice. DK Metcalf could have an okay game, but maybe Jaron Brown ends up getting most of the points again. So it's really hard to trust any of the receivers this week. If you had to pick one, I'd say go with DK. And then from a tight end perspective, the Rams are actually pretty good against fantasy tight ends, so I don't think Jacob Hollister is going to do too well this week unless he gets you a touchdown. So really you're looking for Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, and Rashad Penny in this game, and not really many of the other options. I think this ends up being a pretty heavy run game. Looking at the Rams, kind of expecting the same thing. I'm not looking to start Goff in this one. I think that he'll be okay, but there's better options out there. If you can avoid having to start Goff in this game, I think that would be a good idea. Gurley could be the running back 1 on the week. McVay has been showing more and more signs of giving him his old workload that we've seen in years past that has made Gurley an elite running back for fantasy, and I think that trend is going to continue. The Seahawks are not very good at stopping the run, and I think if the Rams have any chance of winning, it's going to come on the back of Gurley. From a receiver perspective, Woods has turned into a PPR monster in the past couple weeks, and I think that trend continues. He's been very solid for Goff. He just hasn't been getting any touchdowns for you. Odds are that eventually they're going to come, and if they come this week, along with those receptions, Woods becomes a tremendous wide receiver play for you this week. Cooper Kupp, you're still starting. He's definitely tapered off towards the tail end of the season, but he's still been doing enough for you to warrant a fantasy start. I'm not looking to start Brandon Cooks this week. He's been very inconsistent, and he really just hasn't been good this year. So if you're starting anyone on the receiver side for the Rams, you're starting Woods and you're starting Kupp, and I'd like to bench Cooks. From a tight end perspective, I am really excited to start Tyler Higbee this week. It looks like Gerald Everett is going to miss another week, and the Seahawks are not very good against the tight end. They give up second points allowed against the tight end position for fantasy, so I think Tyler Higbee is in for another really good play this week. There's a few options I'd start above him, but he ends up being the best streamer this week. So if you have Tyler Higbee, you can start him with confidence. From a defensive side of the ball, I'm not really excited to start either of these teams, but if I had to pick one, I would pick the Rams. I wouldn't be surprised if they perform well, even though this is a divisional matchup. It is at home, and I think the Rams have a better shot at having a better fantasy defense performance for you. I wouldn't start the Seattle defense unless you absolutely had to. All right, well, hopefully you guys found this entertaining. If you would like, please subscribe to my channel for more content, and you can also check out my playlist for all of the previews for Week 14. Good luck to you guys in the playoffs this week, and we'll see you in the next video.